I think the Queen's duty and her service, her tolerance, her commitment to others, I think that's all been incredibly important to me, and it's been a real sort of guiding example. And I felt, you're losing people every single time you have those headlines. We all get that there's a really big urgent message, and I'm not...
The institution had been quietly underestimating for years. Prince William had made his move, and when he did, nothing in that ancient household would ever be the same again. This is not a story about family drama or palace gossip. This is the story of how a Prince of Wales, not yet a king, reached into the very heart of the British crown and ripped out what was rotting inside it. What he uncovered was so damaging, so deliberate, and so deeply personal that it would bring a dying king to tears and send a queen into exile. But before we get to the shocking conclusion, we need to go back to the beginning, because the move William made at that Christmas lunch didn't happen overnight. It was planned, calculated, and executed with the kind of precision that only comes from months of watching, waiting, and building a case that could not be denied. So how did it all start, and what exactly did William find that justified such ruthless, decisive action? The Christmas table that changed everything. Christmas lunch at Sandringham is one of the most carefully choreographed events in the royal calendar. Roasted turkey, fine wine, polite conversation across a table heavy with tradition and expectation. It is a setting designed to project unity, a family at peace with itself and with the nation it represents. But on this particular Christmas, the unity was a fiction, and William knew it. He sat at the head of the table motionless. Camilla's children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, filled the room with the confidence of people who believed their access to this world was permanent. They spoke about estate renovations and wine cellars with casual entitlement. King Charles looked tired, not just the fatigue of a man fighting illness, but the deeper exhaustion of someone carrying more than he could name. Camilla's practiced smile flickered for a moment, but William caught it. The main course had just been cleared when William set his water glass down on the table. The sound was quiet, a single deliberate clink. It was barely audible, but everyone at that table felt it. Seconds later, the dining room doors opened. Staff and security officers moved into the room with controlled precision. Conversation stopped. A fork paused midair. The room held its breath. William rose slowly from his chair and placed a blue folder on the table. The soft thud it made was louder than anything said all afternoon. Inside that folder was the beginning of the end. Forensic audit reports, bank statements, shell company registrations, invoices, tracing the movement of millions of pounds, siphoned, rerouted, hidden from royal accounts. Tom Parker Bowles, his face drained of color. He sputtered, called it an insult, turned to his mother as if she could fix it. Laura Lopes sat perfectly still, the kind of stillness that comes from sudden terror. Camilla gripped her napkin, her knuckles turned white. She said nothing. King Charles stared down at the pages before him, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition.
We also share with so many of you in the United Kingdom, in all the countries, so you can't be the same as the sovereign if you're the Prince of Wales or the heir.
The numbers left no room for argument. William's voice when he spoke was even, almost quiet, but every word landed like a blow. All contracts between the Crown and the front companies were terminated. Effective immediately, state auditors would begin reclaiming misappropriated funds. Access to royal properties and finances was revoked in full. There was no negotiation, no appeals process, no second chance. Security officers stepped forward, guiding Tom and Laura from their seats out of the dining room. They were not permitted to use the main exits. They were walked through the service corridors and led out through the rear entrance, the door used by delivery drivers and staff. Their protests echoed in empty corridors. William watched from the window as they were placed in a security vehicle and driven away. His expression gave nothing away. He understood how it would look ruthless, but he had calculated that too, because the message wasn't just for Tom and Laura, it was for everyone watching inside the palace. Every member of staff who had stayed silent, every official who had looked the other way. The era of exploiting royal privilege was finished. The rules had changed, and no one, not even the children of a queen, would be above them. But here is the question nobody in that room dared to ask out loud. How did a Prince of Wales, not yet king, have the legal authority to do any of this? How could he remove the Queen's own children from crown privileges and act against his father's household? The answer lies in what happened 48 hours before that Christmas lunch. The midnight transfer of power 2 days before Christmas, a meeting took place that would never appear in any official schedule or palace press release at St. James's Palace in a secure conference room. William sat across from the Lord Chief Justice and the Home Secretary. The atmosphere was less like a royal transition and more like a tribunal. The official version released to the press described a voluntary transfer. King Charles III, facing health challenges, had temporarily granted regency powers to William to ensure stability. The language was measured, reassuring. But the reality behind that transfer was something else entirely. William was not simply stepping in as caretaker. He was taking control of the crown, specifically to remove what he had concluded was a malignant influence. At 9:47 p.m., King Charles signed the transfer documents. His signature was shaky but deliberate. By 10:15 p.m., William was already acting. His first call was to summon two of the most powerful figures in the palace ecosystem. To a midnight meeting at Clarence House, the Director General of MR5 and the Keeper of the Privy Purse were called in, and the pressure hit the second they walked through the door. Their roles were already on thin ice, and William made that crystal clear right away. He told them their offices had been compromised by influences tied to the Queen's household, and while he didn't make direct accusations, one thing was obvious: cooperation was not optional. The Keeper, a 30-year royal veteran, tried to lean on protocol and the old ways of doing things, but William shut it down fast. Those same protocols had allowed millions to disappear, and he wasn't letting that continue. By 2 a.m., both men were effectively out, replaced without ceremony. William had already lined up new people, outsiders with sharp skills and zero attachment to palace politics. These weren't traditional insiders. They were financial forensic experts and counterintelligence professionals, people who cared about facts, not titles. Then came access to what insiders later called the real crown jewel, not something you can hold, but something far more powerful: data, the black box, a locked digital archive holding decades of financial transactions, security files, personnel records, and classified communications. Only the monarch and consort were meant to access it, which made it powerful but also dangerously unchecked. That exclusivity created the perfect blind spot, and someone had clearly taken advantage of it. At 3:30 a.m., William ran his first search, pulling every contract and payment connected to the Parker Bowles family over 5 years. What came back didn't just confirm his suspicions, it went way beyond them. This wasn't random or sloppy, it was structured, deliberate, and built to last. Royal funds had been hidden inside normal-looking expenses like logistics, maintenance, events, even charity. On the surface, everything looked routine, nothing suspicious. But once you looked at the patterns, the truth was impossible to ignore. Money was being rerouted in both small and large amounts, spaced out carefully to avoid detection, building up in accounts no one expected to question. It was too consistent, too precise to be accidental. At the center of everything were Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. They weren't just benefiting, they were controlling it. A web of offshore trusts in the Isle of Man, Jersey, and the British Virgin Islands, all connected to shell companies holding palace contracts. Every invoice, every payment, every signature led back to them. This wasn't chance, this was engineered. Tom's side controlled luxury food supply deals. Scottish salmon billed at triple the market rate. Wine pushed up to £2,000 a bottle instead of 500. Even flowers were massively overpriced without reason. Laura's side was just as aggressive. Tens of thousands charged for media advice that barely amounted to a single email. Hundreds of thousands for crisis management during times when nothing was even happening. And then came the most shocking category: special event production and coordination. When investigators compared invoices with actual records and photos, the truth was clear. Some events never even took place. Others were exaggerated far beyond reality.
Bring down inflation, to ease the cost of living for families.
Don't want to be scared too much, but it's that sort of fristle, isn't there? Just being a little bit frightened.
Over 5 years, around £45 million had been routed through accounts controlled by Camilla's children, with every transaction passing through the Queen's office before reaching the Keeper of the Privy Purse. William now understood how the money moved, but one question still remained. Was Camilla aware, or was she ignoring it? The answer began to appear in a small but critical detail: a purple seal. That same mark showed up again and again on key documents, always at moments when the king was at his weakest. The forensic team working in a sealed basement at Kensington Palace weren't ordinary staff. They were elite investigators brought in from major financial cases. No phones, no internet, no outside contact. Just one goal: find the truth. And what they found was even worse than expected. One analyst, known for uncovering a massive money laundering operation, started examining a protected emergency fund. This fund required two approvals: the Keeper and the King himself, a rule meant to prevent abuse. But over 5 years, there had been 237 withdrawals totaling £87 million. Signature analysis revealed something disturbing. Normally, the king's signature showed 95 to 98% consistency, but on the largest transactions, between £500,000 and £3 million, it dropped to as low as 45 to 70%. These weren't just tired signatures. They showed clear signs of physical strain, shaking hands, slowed control, heavy medication. When those signatures were matched with the king's medical schedule, everything lined up. The biggest transactions happened during chemotherapy and recovery periods, times when strong medication would impact focus and decision-making. Someone had access to his medical timeline, and they used it with precision. Documents were placed in front of him at the exact moments he was least able to question them. This wasn't accidental. This was calculated, controlled, and executed down to the smallest detail. But there was more, and this is where it gets real dark. High-value requests were hidden using what analysts called a sandwiching technique, buried between stacks of boring paperwork. Ceremonial letters, military approvals, charity documents, all piled together so the dangerous pages disappeared in plain sight. Staff loyal to Camilla's office applied pressure, always calm, always controlled. "We really must get these signed today, sir. Perhaps quickly so you can rest." And Charles, exhausted, trusting, surrounded by people he believed were helping him, signed fast. Page after page, just seconds on each one. Then came the detail that changed everything: the seal. Special fund requests passed through the Queen's office before reaching Charles, and each one got marked with a small purple insignia, Camilla's personal seal. It showed the document had already been reviewed and approved for his signature. And on every single fraudulent authorization, beneath Charles's shaking signature, that purple seal was already there, applied 24 to 48 hours earlier every time. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't oversight. This was deliberate. Someone had approved these documents knowing exactly what they were doing, then placed them in front of a king who didn't have the strength or clarity to question them. This wasn't just about stolen money anymore. This crossed a line. This was exploitation, calculated and repeated against a man who trusted the system around him. William knew digital evidence wasn't enough on its own. Strong, yes, but still arguable. What he needed were the originals, the physical papers with Charles's weakened signature and that purple seal stamped on them. Because if those documents disappeared, everything could fall apart. A fire, a random accident, missing files. It wouldn't be the first time evidence vanished when things got too close. So William didn't rush. He set a trap. He focused on Margaret Thornton, an admin assistant in the Privy Purse office, someone personally recommended by Camilla years earlier. She wasn't corrupt. She truly believed Camilla had been treated unfairly, and that kind of loyalty made her predictable. William's team staged a conversation nearby, loud enough for her to hear. Auditors talking about how the money trail was complete, how only the original signed documents were missing, and how once those were secured, the case would be impossible to challenge. Margaret heard everything. Within 6 hours, Camilla knew. She was at Clarence's house having tea when the message reached her through what remained of her network. She sent everyone away and spent hours thinking it through. The digital evidence was already dangerous, but the physical documents were the real threat. If those papers survived, there was no way out. So she made a move. She pulled out a disposable phone and called Ali Hassan, her chief close protection officer. For 15 years, Ali had protected her through everything. He had handled threats, blocked danger, and stayed loyal through it all. His loyalty had never failed. Until now. Camilla explained what needed to be done. Safe number 4 in Archive B, the original authorizations. They have to disappear. Ali understood instantly. This wasn't protection. This was destruction of evidence. At 1:45 a.m., he entered Buckingham Palace through a staff entrance, dressed like night security. His clearance gave him access to restricted areas without raising suspicion. He carried a flashlight with a hidden laser cutter and an incendiary device ready for the final step. He moved through corridors he knew well, avoiding patrols and cameras, heading straight for the archive room deep inside the palace. At 2:03 a.m., he reached the door and the keypad accepted his clearance. Inside, it was dark and silent, with rows of reinforced cabinets stretching into the shadows. Safe number 4 stood at the far wall. He activated the cutter, slow and controlled, working through the lock. After 15 minutes, it finally gave in. The door opened. Inside was a red portfolio, about 40 pages of original authorizations. Charles's signature appeared on every page, unsteady and weak, and beneath each one, the purple seal. every page tied to large amounts of money. Ali raised the lighter, and suddenly the room exploded with light. Floodlights turned on instantly, footsteps rushed in, and a voice cut through sharp and loud. "The file stays! Hands on your head now!" Armed royalty protection officers surrounded him within seconds. The team had been waiting. Ali had no way out. He raised his hands and was restrained while the portfolio was secured as evidence. The charges were read out immediately: attempted destruction of crown property, unauthorized access, obstruction of an official investigation, and more serious offenses due to how he entered. Then came the final blow. The phone Camilla used had already been monitored for 3 days. Every word of her instruction had been recorded. She had exposed herself in her own voice. Ali was taken to a secure interrogation room, a place not listed anywhere official. No windows, no outside noise, just cameras and controlled silence. Across from him sat Prince William and Lord Justice Peyton. This wasn't just about building a case. William wanted answers. Why would a trained and loyal officer cross that line? The interrogation started with the recording. Camilla's voice, clear and undeniable, ordering the destruction of the documents. Ali stayed still, but the tension showed. His jaw tightened and his breathing slowed, like someone holding everything in. William laid out the consequences clearly. Prison time, loss of pension, no support for his family, everything gone in an instant. Then came the alternative: full cooperation, reduced sentence, protection for his family, in exchange for the truth. Ali sat in silence for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was calm and steady. He said the loyalty he once believed in had crossed a line. Camilla hadn't asked him to protect someone. She had asked him to commit a crime to cover up something much bigger, of a dying king. And that detail changed everything. For 6 straight hours, Ali's testimony tore the entire operation apart. What he described wasn't random theft or careless greed. It was structured, planned, and even named. Camilla had called it the Post-Charles Safety Fund, and the goal was clear: secure at least £100 million before Charles passed. This wasn't panic, this was preparation. A financial system designed to protect her status, her lifestyle, and her position once everything shifted. She used her children as instruments, routing royal contracts through shell companies and quietly funneling money into trusts under their control. It wasn't messy or impulsive, it was controlled and deliberate. She had even accessed Charles's medical schedule under the excuse of organizing her own diary, then studied it closely to identify the exact moments when he was most vulnerable. After chemotherapy, after surgery, under heavy medication, when he was most trusting and least able to question what was in front of him. That's when the documents appeared. Fraudulent transfers were dressed up as charitable donations, conservation efforts, and cultural investments, all made to look like thoughtful decisions from a king concerned about his legacy. Ali confirmed something even more disturbing. Camilla never showed guilt. Her concern was never about what she had done, only about the risk of being exposed. To her, this was business, nothing more. William listened to every word, and something shifted inside him. This was no longer just about legal responsibility or institutional duty. His father had loved this woman for decades, defended her, protected her, elevated her, and in return she had used his weakest moments against him. The evidence was complete, but the hardest part was still ahead: telling the king. The morning felt cold and heavy as William drove himself to his father's residence, ignoring protocol entirely. This wasn't something that could be delegated or softened through distance. He arrived at 9 a.m. carrying only a briefcase, small in appearance but carrying a weight far beyond the papers inside. Charles sat in his private study, surrounded by memories of a life defined by duty and care. But the illness was now visible. His strength had faded, and while his dignity remained, it felt more fragile than ever. Camilla was in the room too, but the moment she saw William's face, she understood this was different. There would be no managing this conversation. William said nothing at first. He simply opened the briefcase and began laying out the evidence piece by piece. Financial records showed money moving from royal accounts through complex structures tied to her children. Then came the documents, original authorizations bearing Charles's signature and that unmistakable purple seal. He explained the scale clearly: £87 million over 5 years, hidden behind false invoices and inflated contracts, all leading back to Tom and Laura. Then he handed Charles a single document, a £2.88 million conservation payment that had been redirected through shell companies into a private trust. Charles's hands trembled as he held it, unable to remember signing it. William continued, pairing documents with medical records, showing how dozens of high-value approvals had been signed during periods of physical vulnerability. Then he pointed to the seal and explained its meaning. This wasn't a clerical error or oversight, it was confirmation. Someone had reviewed these documents and approved them before placing them in front of a king who could not properly assess them. Every page carried her mark. Charles stared at the purple seal, and something inside him broke. The woman he had trusted above everyone else had seen his illness not as something to protect, but as an opportunity to exploit. The final piece was the recording. Ali's voice filled the room, calm and precise, explaining the structure, the timing, the intent, the post-Charles safety fund, and the £100 million target. When it ended, silence took over. Charles finally spoke, asking one quiet question: why? He had given her everything: love, protection, status, even at personal cost, and she had turned his illness into strategy. The tears that followed weren't anger, they were grief. The kind that comes from realizing something deeply personal was never what it seemed. Camilla tried to respond, but her explanations collapsed under the weight of the evidence. She shifted blame, suggested William's emotions were involved, framed her actions as protection. William cut through it directly. Her fear of losing security had cost her the one thing that mattered most: trust. Charles said nothing, sitting in silence as every memory began to shift under this new reality. Finally, William asked him directly whether to proceed with full exposure or contain the scandal. Charles, still shaken, gave a small nod. It was quiet, but it carried finality. Permission. The end of something that had defined his life. A short time later, William stood before Camilla again, his voice steady and without emotion. This was not revenge, it was removal. The monarchy could not survive a public trial involving a queen consort. He presented the legal order, formally sealed and signed, and outlined the terms. She had 15 minutes to leave, would be relocated to a remote estate in the Scottish Highlands, and her finances would be restricted to a monitored stipend. She would retain her title in name only, but would be permanently removed from all public duties. Most significantly, she would have no contact with Charles. No calls, no letters, no visits. Any communication would go through legal channels. Her children's access to the institution would be limited and dependent on full cooperation and financial restitution. Camilla attempted to argue, citing her rights and years of service, but William remained calm. He simply outlined the alternative: full criminal prosecution, public trials, and global exposure. That ended it. She fell silent. Charles didn't look at her or speak. Whatever remained between them ended in that moment. She whispered a single word: acceptance. 2 officers entered and escorted her out. There was no ceremony, no status left, just a quiet exit. She left with only what she was wearing, everything else to be reviewed and potentially liquidated for restitution. Step by step, she walked out of the life she had built, through halls where she once held power, into a car with no royal insignia. William watched it disappear, then turned back to his father. Charles remained seated, staring out into the gray morning, caught between relief and devastation. William placed a hand on his shoulder and told him quietly that he had been betrayed, but now he was protected. Charles asked what would happen next. William answered honestly. The immediate danger was over, but the work ahead would be difficult. Trust needed to be rebuilt, systems reformed, and accountability made real. Charles listened, then offered one final thought: that protecting the monarchy must not come at the cost of its humanity. Kate entered quietly and stood beside William, taking Charles's hand and assuring him he would be cared for as a person, not just a symbol. Charles, exhausted, managed a faint smile. As William and Kate left, he paused at the door and looked back, fully aware of the weight of what had just happened. Behind them, the past remained in that cold morning. Ahead, the future felt uncertain, fragile, and urgent. The monarchy had survived crises before, but something this personal, this deep, was different. Questions remained about trust, about exile, about what this would mean for Charles and for the institution itself. And all of it now rested on one man, Prince William, who stepped forward when it mattered most and proved he could lead, even before the crown was his.